Ready to talk Michigan football with former Wolverine Jim Scarcelli on this last Wednesday of February. Scar, it's great to see you. What's going on?
Fired up, Danny. Fired up, man. I just got a little text from our mutual friend, the Pride of Trenton, Big Hoss, Gindia, Big John. He says, Brady McGregor, they interviewed him down there at the Combine. This is what McGregor said. He said, man, it feels like Schembechler Hall down here. We got Coach McDonald over here looking at us. We got Coach Harbaugh, Coach Elston, all the former Michigan coaches. So that was great. You got 18 Wolverines. 17.8% of all the athletes that were invited to the Combine are Wolverines. 17.8%. I don't know how that's the stat that was sent to me. But, Danny, real quick, though, this time of year, I've covered this in the past. You're building your team. You're in the weight room. I remember being the young freshman. You go through a season. You play the bowl game, and now all them older dudes are gone. And you're in the weight room, and you're starting to see a pecking order. You're starting to see guys step up. You have your team runs, your team lifts. And, when you're a sophomore, you just kind of keep your mouth shut and you go along but you see, the guys that are going to be seniors, and you start to see that, who's leading the drills, who's winning the sprints, who's maybe saying something at the end of practice. The words are not all that important. I was always a guy that admired the guys that were just flat out stud, every day on time, worked their butt off, led by example guys. But anyway, that's going on. So you're starting to really build your team and your leadership in the weight room right now.
Are guys, do you think it's the same? Do you lift with your classmates? Do you lift with your position group? Do you lift the offense, defense? How does that work?
I think they do it a little different. They do position groups. They have these guys come in at different times, right? I think they do have some team runs, though. I think it's good to have everyone together, to constantly build team. You just got to constantly do it, man. And those team runs, and yeah, you can't. But anyway, old Papa here says Scar looks like he could still suit up. How about that,
Yeah.
Danny?
Well, why don't you go ahead, tell Papa and everybody else? You're flashing your arms there. What's up? You working out every day, a couple times?
No, I'm 3 days a week. I'm in about an hour, just enough, man. Eat right, get your work in. And just stay consistent, man. It never changes. You just got to be consistent. Can't be a part-time guy.
You change up your workouts?
A little bit, but not much. You get older, I can't be trying a lot of new stuff. I'll come out doing some new movement or something. I'll be limping for 2 weeks. So you get your groove, you get your routine. You got I need a long warm-up. It ain't like the old days. You can just, get out there and start running around. You got to warm up, but stay on it, man. Your health, no substitute.
These guys put 225 on, and then they'll go to see how much they can lift that, how many times. So you'll warm up, and then you'll throw 225 on, and then you'll throw it up 30, 40 times, just like they do.
Danny, what's interesting is you talk about the Combine. I remember when we had our pro day, I did it 22 times. I weighed like 230, and that was just, I don't know. I remember doing that. I did it 22 times. We had a guy, Bob Tabacino, he did it like almost 50 times.
Wow.
Yeah, he could bench almost 600 pounds. But they still do the same test, the shuttle, the 40, And so there's guys this week, they're going to run some of the most important 40-yard dashes of their life. Those every split second matters, and on how these guys are evaluated.
Yeah, I was talking about that Monday. The JJ could be faster than people expected. He could turn some heads. I think Quorum's got really good football speed. And then Roman Wilson might be the fastest guy in Indy. So there's a lot of things with those guys. And there's, like you said, another 14 guys that are going to run. And then, so we'll see what they're at. But with those three, I think will could turn some heads.
Hey, people like Michigan guys, man. You know, I read some articles from some scouts and, you know, general managers. And you play for Jim Harbaugh. They talked about you can coach them hard. You can coach guys hard. They're going to be smart. They're going to be responsible guys. You know, they're not going to, you know, and that's a compliment to Jim and the culture. And it's going to make, you know, Sherrone's going to maintain all of that you can coach a guy hard. You can get in his face. He's not going to, you know, he's competitive. He's responsible. And just all the little things you want in your players, man, that these guys wanted Michigan. Don't fool yourself. That's why 18 of them are there. It's not just that they're all great athletes. They're the kind of guys that these teams want culturally, mentally.
Yeah, and I'm sure they're sitting around thinking they want to go as high as they can, but they also want to go to a place that they can find an area where they might, you know, be the best fit. And then I think they probably are all like, if I'm a defensive player, I want to play for the Ravens or I want to play for the Seahawks. You know, John Harbaugh and that system, the Seahawks with Mike McDonald said, or I want to go play for Harbaugh for the Chargers. Blake Corum wants to play for Harbaugh. I can see that. I think any of those guys probably want to play for Harbaugh. But then it's just like you want to go anywhere after that. You might not want to go to Buffalo or Green Bay. I don't think if you have your wish list, you want to go anywhere, but you might not want to go there. You go to Miami.
I don't know, man. You throw enough money at you, money talks. These guys will go anywhere. Just give them a chance to play and compete. You know, these guys will go.
Yeah, anywhere. Everything being equal, though, I would want to go to. And if I was Roman Wilson, now Roman Wilson came to from Hawaii to Michigan, so he's familiar with the cold weather and everything else, but he might want to go to LA. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know, man. You know, you go where they draft you, you go where you go. I mean, I was a free agent. I picked the team. I had like 4 options, and thought we got a lot of guys that are going to be free agents, and you know,
and you picked the Raiders.
Pardon?
You picked the Raiders.
Yeah, I just thought it was the best fit for me.
Al Davis. You thought, you know, I'm an Al Davis type player.
I just thought it was the best chance for me to make the team based on what they had, you know. So
okay,
but no. Anyway, you know, the strength, the weight room is what's happening, man, and there's a whole lot of building that team, Danny. It's just so important. I know as a coach, you know, I was in this time of year, man. There's just you're just pounding, man. You're finding out about guys, and it's easy to show up on Saturday, Denny, with 100,000 and be fired up. But how fired up are you, you know, in the middle of February when it's cold and ain't nothing happening, to go in there and crush the weight room? So you're finding out. And then these strength coaches too, man. You know, these new guys are, you know, they like I talked about it. They ain't taking no back seat. They're not going to be. I guarantee you, they were coming out swinging at these players. You know that, hey, Ben's gone, but man, we're here, so we're bringing it.
Yeah, they have to. They're the ones that are making the first impression. You know, they got Sherrone Moore and everything, but Herbert's gone, and the guy was a legend, and they have. Moore has to replace Harbaugh, who's a legend. All those guys in the weight room have to replace Herbert, who's a legend. So they all have their work cut out for them. So do we. We're going to get to the last year's team, championship team, the 18 guys that Scar says they're in Indy, who are going to be the toughest to replace. And then Scar has a point about something that Sherrone Moore has to do. But we're going to start out with the Horns. The Horns are coming in on September the 7th. Michigan opens up with Fresno on the last day of August. And then a week later, they take on the Texas Longhorns, Steve Sarkisian and company coming in. Let's start there, Scar. What about these Horns? What do you think they're thinking about Michigan?
You know, Denny, the Michigan coaches, okay, we open up with Fresno. You know, we've got spring ball coming right around the corner. You know, if I'm Wink Martindale, I'm looking at the Buckeye film. I'm looking at Spartan film. I'm starting with those two guys. But I'm taking everybody on our schedule. I'm taking a look at what Minter did. I might take a look at what McDonald did against Ryan Day. I'm looking at a lot of Oregon State film because that's what I'm going to see. So you're looking at Texas. Michigan coaches are looking at Texas. That's game 2. Obviously, we start with Fresno, but they're going to be working on that stuff in those 15 practices. There'll be a bit of Spartan. There'll be some Buckeye. There'll be some Texas. And anyway, Wink will be working on those things. Sherrone in the offense will be working on those things. So Texas is, they're smart guys too. They're going to look at Michigan. They're going to look at our defense. Okay, we had McDonald. We had Minter and what he did and the things he did. And now they got to figure out what is this guy Wink going to do. They know the structure is pretty much going to stay the same. But they're probably looking at some Giants tape. They're looking at some Ravens tape. And they're looking at those things. How different is this guy? And what are his beliefs? How different is it than Minter's? So I just wanted to point it out that those things are going on. You're looking at that. You got to think about getting some work in spring ball. They're looking at how does Wink adjust to certain formations compared to Minter? They're going to look at the same formations that maybe they saw in the pros. If I was at Texas, I would look at what Baltimore, when he was there, or what the Giants did against, I don't know if the Giants played the Ravens, the running quarterback stuff, because we're going to have a lot of Raven offense in our playbook. So they're looking at adjustments, the stunts, and they're going to prepare for all that. They're obviously looking at our players on defense. And I think their defensive coach is going to, look at I think they're going to see, I don't think there's going to be much changes in our offense. But, the big thing is, who's our quarterback going to be? That's the thing. That's a kind of an advantage for us. Now, we know who their quarterback is. That kid went into Alabama and won last year, Ewers. So he's a good quarterback. They got that question answered. We don't know who our guy is, but they don't know either. They got to prepare for Orji. They got to prepare for Denigal. They got to prepare for Tuttle. So, they will be scouting our spring game, Denny. They will be looking at our spring game big time. This is one of the things, like I talked about, the big blue fence over there on Stadium Boulevard to keep the rats away with the cameras. You don't think that that's important in spring ball to keep the people away from filming our practice and looking at things? So anyway, a lot of stuff going on with them. There's some advantages of that. We don't know which quarterback is going to play, but that's what's happening.
Do you think that no, it wouldn't come from Michigan? And I know it just happened last year. People would say, "Hey, wait a second, everything." But do you think we should send a reconnaissance down to Austin where they're practicing and having like a Connor Stallions type? Not that somebody's on the staff, but is Michigan trying to tape Texas?
No, we're not doing that.
Oh, no.
I'm saying we're going to be at their spring game.
No, sure, right. You'd be at the spring game.
Yeah, I'm just saying.
With
Danny, the rats are out there, man. They got D'Antonio on tape. You got the guy that from the old Spartan said D'Antonio sent guys to Ann Arbor to film. So, there's a big question mark as to what our offense might look like with it. I would want to know, listen, if I'm going to play Michigan, I would want to know who the starting quarterback is as soon as possible, because that really affects, there's I think there's just a difference between, you're not going to have all that run stuff with Tuttle. It matters, but no, hell no, Michigan isn't doing that. But I think the enemy has done it to us, Denny. That's why we built that big Mark D'Antonio fence out there, Urban Meyer fence out there, in honor of those two guys. That's why it was built. Denny, that's why it was built, man, in honor of those guys. It wasn't built for shade.
No, you can't be too careful when it comes to.
No, because we caught people over there, man. We caught them. That's why it was built. So anyway, yeah, we got to get figure out what Texas. We're looking at Texas. Obviously, but they got their same defensive coaches back, same offensive coaches back, and but we're looking at all that. And those are the things you're going to work on in the spring. Buckeye, Spartans, Texas. Those three would be high on my list because the other guys but you always got to work on the Buckeyes and the Spartans.
All right. Well, right off the top, when you talk about the toughest guys to replace, JJ McCarthy is going to take the number one spot. I think that would be everybody's vote. He's going to be the toughest to replace. Is that true? Who else?
Yeah, Danny. There's no question. There's no question. And what bugged me about the whole, it was not the way I used to do things as a coach. I wanted to get. I'm still not happy that we didn't get our young guys more work. Now, we had some games that we got them some work, Denegal and Orji. We had a little package for Orji, but I just wish they would have got a hell of a lot more work. No question, JJ's going to be the most difficult to replace. But, hey, if we get great performance early, we're going to forget about it soon. But, I've got offensively, I just have so much. And I'm looking at it from a standpoint, Danny, of if you have a really good replacement and you have a lot of great confidence in your replacement, that's why obviously Corum is a great player, but I don't have him as big as a difficulty to replace as like a guy like AJ Barner because he was just so crucial to our run game. I don't have an answer for who our blocking tight end is. So that's why I have him as the second most toughest guy to replace. I mean, there might be an answer, but I know at the running back position, I got Donovan. I think I was wrong about Jordan Marshall. I said the kid might have a hard time playing. I looked at some of his highlight films, and I saw that kid in person play down here at King a couple years ago. He's going to be battling. He might get some early clock. So we're going to have 4 good-looking running backs. So Barner is my second guy in offense. And then the guy in defense, Denny, again, Jenkins was a great player. Sanderstroll's a great player, but I think we have really, really good depth there, guys that are going to plug in. But I'm thinking Junior is going to be the toughest guy to replace defensively. He had such a good year, and we still got a few questions as to how good are the replacements going to be at the linebacker position. So those are my 3, JJ, Barner, because I don't know which guy can block, and then Junior on defense.
That all makes sense. Now, I don't have the football background, but that you do. But if I was making a selection of 3, JJ definitely would be number 1. I might go to Drake Nugent. They've had such great production from the last 3 years, from Bastardas to Oluf, and then Nugent last year. And I don't know, maybe Greg Crippen's going to just pick it right up and get in there right in the center of everything, be able to make the calls, and he'll be great with a new quarterback. But I would put him pretty high on the list. And I would put Sainristil. The thing with Sainristil is that when the transfer portal was open, Michigan, they were interested. Well, at least at the beginning, they went after, doesn't make it that, these are the 2 positions but they went after a tall wide receiver. They went after 2 of them, one from Wake Forest and one from Indiana. And then they went after 2 corners. The one guy from Northwestern, and then another one down south that I think went to Ole Miss, maybe from Louisiana even, where the Michigan DB coach is from, Amos, I think. But so, and one of them looked like he was a slot guy. But I would put Sainristil made so many. Not only was he so good at covering, not only was he good at tackling, but he was a great player. He made big time plays in the 2 years that he was over there. That's just tough. And maybe
you're right, Danny. You're right. I'll put him there. You're absolutely right, and I could be wrong. And he had a great career. And, Jerry had that film last week looking at some of our young offensive linemen.
Yeah.
That's why I don't have Crippen on that list, because I got faith in the kid. Jerry pointed out some things that he did.
He did. He liked it. He looked like.
And we've been looking at him. And I know, like I said, I played with guys that sat the bench for 4 years. They were damn good players, man. Just play behind good players. So he's that's why we didn't bring no transfer in. And you know, Danny, I've been saying for the last couple months that I don't think our starting quarterback is on our roster, right?
You have said that. That's right.
But I think I do believe now the fact that they invited Tuttle back. I think they're satisfied with the 3 guys that we have. That's I don't see somebody of note showing up in the portal that's going to be better than the 3 guys we have. So I do not now think they're going to bring a transfer quarterback in. I think they feel comfortable with the 3 guys we have.
Well, the other thing to consider, and that's obvious, but you always want to win a championship. So you always want to go to whatever it was, January the 8th, but there were a lot of other teams already lining up and going after quarterbacks there. And then, you know, JJ's decision, which went, what was it? The day after the parade. So that was the 13th. So that was our January the 14th. McCarthy didn't make his decision. The transfer portal quarterback wise was already picked over, except the guy that went back to Washington. So there could be a factor there too. Like, yeah, they like the guys that they had, but there was the other guys that might have been that they would have thought about were already gone. Maybe.
Yeah. I don't know if that late JJ deal affected things, but I'm believing and I'm hoping that it's the fact of the matter is they just got a lot of faith in the guys we have. That's what I'm hoping.
Let me ask you a question, Scar. The things have changed in football, in particular with the completion percentage. But if there's a number that I noticed that people are zeroing in on, and with Alex Orji, it's completion percentage. He didn't have a very good completion percentage in high school. Do you think that he has to be above 60%? Do you think it can be a little bit higher than that? Is there a number that you would look at and say, hey, he's got to be
when you're looking at a quarterback and you look at your offense, it's like the totality of what this guy gives the offense. You know, I got in a debate with somebody that's telling me, oh, Dan Marino's the best quarterback ever because of his stats. And I'm like, okay, according to you, then that means Lamar Jackson isn't a very good quarterback because he doesn't have a lot of great passing stats. But I don't want to defend either of those guys for different reasons. You know what I mean? They're both very difficult to defend. Lamar Jackson, Dan Marino. Same thing looking at our offense. So if you're looking at Alex Orji or Tuttle or Denegal, you know, it's like, and believe me, Wink Martindale and the defensive coaches at the end of the spring will be able to tell you, you know, okay, what do I get with this guy that I don't have to defend with that guy? You know, what is this guy? So I don't know if I'm answering the question, but you can't just say, well, you know, his passing percentage was, 62.5 and his was 71.3, but this guy can't run and they don't run these plays with him. And, you know, and he doesn't make guys miss, or I can't run naked quarterback, you know, all this other stuff. So you look at the totality of what the threat is when that guy's behind center compared to the other guy. So, that's how I'm looking at it. If I'm coaching our offense, you know, what does this guy bring? What's the problem? What kind of problems does he give the defense? And I don't, if his passing percentage is a little less than that guy, okay, I got to take it into consideration. But I got to take everything into consideration. You know, is he securing the ball? Does he get us in the right play? Does he carry out his fakes? Does he make guys miss? Does he avoid the rush? Does he feel the rush? All these little things that don't show up on stats. So
yeah, very good answer. If Alex Orji throws, 56% completion, people would be like, oh my God. But if he's running like Lamar Jackson and Jalen Hurts, and he's not throwing any interceptions, and you're getting points per drive that are there, you're going to be okay. You want him to throw 65%, but throw a couple picks in there? No, whatever that balance and whatever it is. Yeah, you want him to protect the football. You don't want him to be throwing interceptions. Now, Harbaugh said during the Rose Bowl availability that Jalen Milroe, the Bama quarterback, was a polished Alex Orji. Now, Milroe threw 2 interceptions against Texas in that loss. And then the week later, when they only put up 17 points, he got benched after 3 games. And this was a guy that led his team to the college football playoffs. So all of these things you take into account and you have to remember. But if Orji is, and he looks like he's a hell of a runner. What from we've seen, he doesn't go down easy. He can bowl people over, and he squats like he's a defensive tackle. So I think he could be pretty excited. By the way, Dan Marino, I have him as my 5th greatest quarterback of all time currently. Number 5. I have Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes. Number 2. He is up on that list. I also have I'll put Peyton Manning at 3, John Elway, and I'll put Dan Marino at number 5 on that list. I'm a big Dan Marino guy.
All right, that's another argument for another day. But, Denny, I was thinking about this. With Michigan, if we go with Orji, we're going to be Ravens Midwest. Our offense.
Let's go. I like that.
It'll look a lot like, and what did the Ravens do? I mean, what did they do this past year? I mean, they made it to the AFC.
The best record in the league.
Yeah, but Denny, you know what they did is they minimized the amount of runs for Lamar. And they still had the threat. And that's the thing I know as a defensive coach. If the threat is there enough that I still have to honor it, it makes all those other plays more difficult to defend. So, he avoids rush, the unscripted plays that a guy like Orji will be able to do that. But that's why I like all 3 of them, those guys, because they can all escape and make things happen.
I think I get the Ravens, and I think you're on that. I also think a lot of what Jalen Hurts does. Now, Hurts is built like a middle linebacker, and so is Orji. And for the longest time, Hurts got benched in the championship game by Nick Saban, and then he lost his job the following year to Tua. And he came in and won the SEC champ. And then he transferred to Oklahoma. His completion percentage was going way up. And then in the NFL, I listened to all these scouts, like the scouts that are this week talking about Jalen and Hurts. And they said, this guy's not going to be able to play in the NFL. He doesn't throw with anticipation. He can't throw outside the hashes. He can't throw the ball downfield. He's a runner. They bring him in on different.
Yeah, Danny, who did they must have asked offensive coaches because it's obviously you talk to a defensive guy like me, about Jalen Hurts, and Josh Allen. If you're not afraid to run those guys, and that's the only downside, and they will run quarterback ISO with Jalen Hurts and Josh Allen on the goal line. They'll just say, forget it. They'll come out empty and run, or lead that back through and run quarterback ISO.
Right. Yeah. Right.
But the big thing with if Orji's our guy, we have to be great with no penalties. We can't get behind the sticks. We don't want to be 3rd and 12 with Alex Orji. With JJ, that was one thing, I think. Again, I'm not being fair to his ability to throw yet. I got to see it, but you want to keep him with 3rd and 4. You know what I mean? I think to interrupt you just for a second that I feel like, and I think the conversation here, like Hurts and the Ravens offense, I also think Michigan is going to be a lot like the Lions. I think they're going to be going for it a lot. I think Orji and the brotherly shove, what makes the tush push so effective is that you have a quarterback that can squat 700 pounds. Now you have to have a great center too. And I don't know, maybe Crippen won't be able to execute it and be able to block that. So that's a factor I don't know about, but I do think Orji, based on how he is built and what I've seen from him already and how he runs the ball like Hurts, I think that there's going to be a lot of brotherly shove in Ann Arbor. Yeah, Danny, let me say this about that play. There's a whole lot of technique going on there.
Yeah, that
is unique. You got to be, they're doing some things. I think they went and met with some rugby guys. If you ever watch, the New Zealand rugby dudes, but the technique.
All Blacks.
Yeah, you watch. I love watching that. I've been around the world and watched some of that stuff. Anyway, the technique is unique. It has to be good. You got to have a great center. You got to have the big. you got the quarterback that's benching 600, squatting 600 pounds. So it's not just like, you can just go ahead and run that stuff. And it's hard you got to have the right personnel. And so that's that. But it's not like you can but yeah, Orji is the kind of kid you could run that with, a big, strong quarterback. But you got to have a great center too. And the technique is something that's, but let me just say this too. I just have to talk about it, since we're talking about our offense and what I think is so difficult to defend with the run game. Maryland, about 3-4 years ago, Denny, in Mike Loxley's first or second year, had two really good quarterbacks coming back. The first one got knocked out for the whole year, the first game, and the second one was done after the second game of the year because he ran the hell out of them. You follow me? So there's a downside to having that offense. Maryland, 3-4 years ago, look it up. It was playing with his third quarterback the rest of the year. Same thing happened to Minnesota a couple of years ago. They lost both their first two quarterbacks. And Denny, I faced guys as a high school coach, and they run their quarterback. And now here I am playing them, week 5 or 6. And they got some third string kid in there. And he's complaining to me, before the game, you talk to the coach, and he's complaining to me, oh yeah, I got my quarterback hurt. I got this. Like, I'm thinking to myself, well, that's because you run them like that. You don't protect them. I said, I got no sympathy for you, man, because you're one of them guys that want to run your quarterback so much. Or there's some of these other guys that want to run spread offense, put 2 receivers there with an average quarterback, and then they're afraid to run their quarterback. And I'm like, I'm not honoring any of that stuff. Your pass game. So people have to honor our spread formation and all the stuff that Jerry was showing. And then when you got the ability to run it too, it's very difficult to defend. We just got to be smart with how much you do it. And like the Ravens did. Like the Ravens did this past year.
And you answered it earlier with Lamar and how Baltimore's doing that. The Bills tried to do that. I said, look, Josh Allen, we don't want you bowling guys over. And then the offense went downhill. They fired their offensive coordinator, and then they said, we want Josh, just go out there and cook. Then he started doing it again, and it worked. I don't know where the sweet spot is. You got a Josh Allen, you got a Lamar Jackson, those guys, you got a Jalen Hurts, you got an Alex Orji. You got to let those guys go a little bit too.
Yeah, and you have to, I always felt the greatest way to prevent injuries is right now what's going on in that weight room. Get guys strong. You get as much muscle and you get them strong and you teach them good technique. Danny, I'm going to respond to a question. It's not on our list here, but one of our listeners last week talked about that maybe we should, because we're going to have a young offensive line, that maybe we should just run zone and not as much of our other stuff, some of our gap stuff. And I found that the answer, if you got a young offensive line, it's the same thing as having older dudes, man. The way you help an offensive line is by putting defenses in conflict, Denny. By meaning you're going to block them different ways. You just don't say, hey, we're going to knock them off the ball. We're going to trap them. We're going to double team them. We're going to zone them. We're going to gap them. That's how you help an offensive line. And that's what our offensive philosophy is to put defenses in conflict. So the answer to that question is, how do you help a young offensive line? By doing all the things we've been doing especially with the running quarterback in there, with the guy that can do all those things. That puts a defense in more conflict. So you run your zone, you run your power, your counter tray, your counter, your gaps, your RPO, the jet sweeps and your quarterback ISO. And that makes it, that is the stuff that makes it tough on a defense. And anyway, I wanted to say that you don't eliminate things. You just do things that put defenses in conflict.
I don't know if this is silly or not. I don't know if TH is actually, he's talking about running the wishbone. Back when you played, the Harbaugh down in some short yardage situations actually did run the wishbone. I think Morris one time against Iowa went the wrong way and Harbaugh threw it out there. That wasn't so good. But you said a couple of weeks ago that even if Orji isn't the quarterback, he's going to be in the backfield at times. And so then let's say you got Denegal, you got Orji, you've got you could have Khalil Mullings back there. You have the pieces where, and didn't Michigan run a side-by-side down there at the goal line a few times? They had Corum to the left. And
yeah, we ran some two-back stuff. And no, Denny, I think no matter who the starting quarterback is, there's going to be, if it's not Alex Orji, there's going to be a huge portion for him. I believe that. Because that is what I would not want to have to prepare for. If I'm Texas, I got to deal with an Orji package too. So I don't want to deal with that. And the Michigan coaches know that's a problem. So, but listen, I'm looking at I'm looking at our offense, and I just think we got big tackles we can run all this. I think our guards are going to be every bit as athletic, if not more athletic, than we've had. Guys that can pull, and we've seen that Crippen can pull, so we should be able to run all the same stuff we ran. The only question I have is how athletic is Gentry pulling and Hinton pulling, because we were able to do a lot of that with Trente Jones. The kid was very athletic, and those are things that help your offense when you've got all 5 of your offensive linemen. You can pull them and do different things because it gives you advantages offensively.
The last thing you said you were going to talk about was that Sherrone Moore, something that he has to do. I wonder if this is involved with this, because Ferris is saying that Orji is gone if he is not the starter. There's too much talent to waste on the sideline. Now Ferris could be correct, but how is Orji going to know if he's the starter if Sherrone Moore doesn't declare even during the practices that he's the starter and he's splitting the reps? So there's a way that you have to go about this as a coach now and in the spring, so you don't have guys transferring even into fall camp. Is that correct with how things work now with the transfer portal, that how you're going to play this if you're Sherrone Moore and company?
Yeah, Danny, listen, if Sherrone Moore wants to have depth at the quarterback position when Texas rolls in town, okay? We don't want to have one guy and 2 of them gone with a true freshman as our backup.
You don't want it to be Orji with Jaden Davis, 1-2.
You don't want to be just Orji with Tuttle gone and Denegal gone, and then here you are with a true. No, you don't want that. You want 3 guys that you go out there and play with. So how do you do that as a coach? Well, let me tell you how you do it. You go out and you tell Denegal publicly that he's the best, most improved player on the team. So what does that do for Denegal? It gives him confidence, right? The coaches like what I'm doing. I feel good about my chances. So they made a public statement, right, Denny? If you're Orji, you feel you have a great chance to start because, well, they played the heck out of me. I played in games. I had a package. I played against against Washington, against Alabama. So he's going to feel confident he has a chance to start. And the same thing with Tuttle. They brought me back for a 7th year. I got to believe the kid thinks he has a chance to start. Okay, so you got all 3 of them. So, Denny, what they do, they're going to go through spring football. And if I'm the head coach at Michigan, I'm not tipping my hand at all because I want them, because exactly what that last caller said, one of them guys are going to pack their bags. Who wants to be the 3rd string guy? And that goes into the thing that I said Sherrone Moore has to do. That is it. He has to keep, and this is a test of his leadership or his cunningness, because, Jim didn't. That's why Jim had the McNamara. He waited till he let those guys play that out. Remember JJ and McNamara? Because he wanted to have 2 good quarterbacks. You know what I mean? He didn't want McNamara packing his bags in July, and now he's got 1 quarterback. So he waited and waited and waited. Is it fair to the kid? Well, whatever. But a coach has to try to have depth and keep his depth. So if I'm coaching Michigan's offense, I want all 3 of those guys back. So that's what that's the biggest thing he has to do, is keep all 3 of those quarterbacks back. Because we want to run our quarterbacks, we want to have depth, and if we lose one of them, now we still got 2 that can go.
Nobody loves the slant route more than Antoine, who wanted to see Michigan incorporate more route trees and definitely wanted to see Michigan put more slants in their offense. And here is Antoine saying, talking about slants and how they must be in the system. We'll have to wait and see.
Denny, Antoine, sometimes you have quarterbacks, there's certain routes that some guys complete and can do better than others. So, if that's something that certain players can do better, Michigan just got to design the system around Orji, and I think Kurt Campbell's smart enough to know this.
That's from AJ on the feedback.
Yeah, and that's coaching, Denny. Is people ask about what are we going to run? What you're gonna find out about your team in these 15 practices. There may be some plays offensively that we just cannot run as well as we did last year because maybe Corum did a better job with it, or certain players, like I talked about tackles being able to pull. You're going to look at your offensive line. What can these guys do? How do I, what can these receivers do? And what can these quarterbacks do? So that's what they're looking at. What can we do? What can we not do? And you go from there, and you don't try to force stuff you can't do. And then the defense is just happy with that. But anyway, that's some of that stuff, Denny. I know there were some good questions that were coming up. I wish I could have jumped on.
Well, I can go back and put some of it out there. Is the final thing that you said this is something that Sherrone Moore has to do? Was that directed at
yeah, that's it. That's the final. That is the right now. Sherrone Moore has done everything that I could have asked for. He's hired a great defensive staff. He made the right moves on offense. He hasn't had players leaving, but he's got to. This is the leadership and his ability to talk to and communicate with those three guys and find a way to keep all three of those quarterbacks, because I think we can win with all three of them. I don't know which one's going to come out number one, but I think he's got to try to keep all three of them on the roster.
You said answer some questions. Ferris wants to talk draft. He says a lot of these guys are not likely first 3 round selections. Are we going to break the record of 15 drafted?
We could. And again, a lot of those guys were invited. I think maybe not because they're the fastest, the best testing guys, because they're Michigan and people know what they're getting with Michigan from a work ethic culture. Be great to see it, man. That would be that all that stuff helps recruiting, Denny, big time.
Sure.
When you can go in there, and I guarantee you there will be some kind of signage. It'll be on the recruiting booklets, whatever, 18 guys invited to the combine. How many did Michigan State have? You know what I mean? It'll be there, man. That stuff will be on there when they're to win the recruiting battles.
Yeah, I think you've got some dudes that maybe they can, when you start talking about 5th, 6th, 7th round, you get to Carson Barnhart and Trente Jones and Michael Barrett. There's 3 that I would say would probably project to the later rounds. I mean, you can go in the 5th, and then if you're going to the 6th and 7th rounds, probably best for those guys not to get drafted, so then they can go and pick the place that they want to go. But so out of the 18 that you're talking about, there's 3 right. It could be tough. Could happen, but if I had to predict, I would say no. But I want to immediately see a yes, but it kind of makes me feel like, oh yeah, Drake Nugent will be picked for sure. He'll be picked. I don't know that he's going to be picked for sure. So I would say no. His records are, they're hard to break. They got a lot of the invitees there, so it makes you think. And Michigan just won the national championship.
Okay, so you don't think we're going to have 15 players drafted?
I would say it's going to be a little short of that. Yeah.
Okay, I'll bet you a hamburger.
Okay, let's go.
We're going to have 15 guys drafted.
Good bet. I like this.
And I like Burger King.
Hey, if that's what you want, I was thinking somewhere nice.
Okay, like Danny. Any other question? There were some good questions. We'll peel some of them back real quick.
All right, let's go through some of these. Let's go to Ferris, who says he thinks Orji is Milroe. That's going to be an optimistic dream. Do you see that?
Very similar, man. Very similar guys. Everybody he made his first start early in the year. Texas got him at the right time last year, and then the kid improved tremendously. And they limited his runs, but his ability to run was huge. He could be that kind of guy, man.
You know, the thing I
Yeah.
have a hard time to believe, and I'm a hard time believing it, and I've seen Orji in the spring game. I saw him in the Rose Bowl in the championship game, but he doesn't look like he's 10, 15 pounds and an inch taller than Milroe, just from watching him on TV, and yet he's listed as an inch taller and 15 pounds heavier. I do go back to Harbaugh saying that Milroe's a more polished Orji, thinking that if you just get those reps, that's polishing. Right now, he's polishing himself up.
Man, I stood next to Junior and Alex Orji. Or Alex Orji looks like he could play linebacker tomorrow. Okay, so he's he's a put together kid, man, and you saw him running dudes over, man.
Ayo says Michigan's got to lean on the run game, and as long as all three quarterbacks can execute the play action, Michigan's offense will be all right. You agree on that?
Yeah, we're going to have, we're going to always have our run game going like that, but we've got to be able to show early that we can throw it. People, listen. If I'm Fresno State and I'm coming into Ann Arbor, I don't care who the quarterback is. I'm loading up and do everything I can to stop that run game, the way UNLV and those guys did. I'm outmanned. I'm not going to let you just hand the ball off to, to Mullings or to Donovan. I'm going to do everything I can, and I'm going to force you to see who can throw the ball for Michigan. Maybe play some zero coverage. That's what I would do if I'm Fresno State.
Sam says he likes Samaj Morgan. He reminds him of a young Desmond at times. I said on Monday that Samaj Morgan reminded me of Antonio Brown when he played for the Steelers. What about you?
Yeah, he's an athletic kid, man. We could run jet sweep with him. He's a wiry, fast, athletic kid, man. He makes people miss when he gets the ball. He catches everything. And I like guys we can run jet sweep with and throw little. I like the guys you can throw a little 5-yard pass and they can turn it into 50. So yeah, he's a heck of an athlete.
All right.
As you're looking for questions, Danny, here's another thing I saw that I really like. I like the fact that Mike McDonald hired Chris Partridge. Okay. When you're coaching, when you're building, when you have a culture the way Jim had things, we all know what happened to Partridge. But you know what? McDonald said, you know what? You're a Michigan guy. They weren't even coaching together. But there's something there. That says something about loyalty for the whole culture of the Harbaughs in Baltimore, the Harbaugh here. McDonald, Jim hired McDonald when he was a little assistant. He helped him out, made him his court. You know what? And he goes and hires Chris Partridge. Those are little favors that come around. Danny, obviously, the guy can coach too.
Yes.
I like that. That's called loyalty, man. That's called loyalty, that one of my guys found a way to help out a guy that was fighting for us. And people are going to have their opinions about it, but I like it.
I like that too. That is nice. And the bottom line is he's a good coach. And when he was first at Michigan, people thought, he's just everybody would say, you hear this a lot, he's an ace recruiter. And then when he came back, people were like, he's an ace recruiter. But when he came back, all of those players and even the coaches, when they talked about the defense and so what makes the defense so good, they talked about these pillars. And that's Partridge was the one that put the pillars in, with these pillars that they were looking for, that they had to meet. Jalen Harrell liked talking about the pillars that they were going after. And that was something that Partridge put into place there. So that was, or whatever, he definitely got a lot of players and even some coaches that referenced that.
The guy can coach, and I just like the fact that that's one of my guys or one of Jim's guys, and we're kind of helping each other. There's a fraternity in coaches, and you got a network to get jobs. And then McDonald go ahead and hires Jay Harbaugh too. So that's good stuff, man.
How about McCarthy? I know I've asked you already about the pros, but Moose is saying throwing at the combine might bump him up to number 1. is it tough?
JJ,
You've got a lot of quarterbacks there. What do you think about?
We've seen the kid throw, and and he's an impressive kid. I've watched him at practice, and he's an impressive kid throwing the ball in person. He's got a good, strong arm, man, and he's healthy. George is talking about he looks faster too. Yeah, he's been healthy. He ran around beat up probably for half the year. He didn't have his speed like he had it early in the year, but anyway. Yeah, JJ's got a lot to offer, man. I'm interested to see where some of these guys go.
Yeah, well, we know he's going to be in the first round. There was a column yesterday by Dan Wetzel who says JJ McCarthy is the player that gets signaled out, that people do deep dives on, that there's this wide variance. Some people have already seen this. Some of the draft experts of saying that he could be the number 2 player off the board behind Caleb Williams. Others don't think that he should be drafted in the first round at all. A lot of the guys that do this and that are draft people, they're saying it's tough because of his film. He doesn't throw it. And, there's a limited amount there, so you have to look at some of the other stuff. But when you do look at his film, I know this when they look at the film, his best thing is probably the thing he's going to have to also work on the most is that you better be able to snap the ball and whatever to be in rhythm or to be on time, on schedule, they like to call it in the pros and probably in college too, is that he can just stand back in the pocket and he can fire the football. That's the number one thing you got to be able to do in the pros. And he can do that, but he does tend to, the ball flies a little bit on him. So I think that I think he could tighten that up, his accuracy on those type of throws downfield. I also wonder, AJ was talking about the slants. They didn't throw a lot of those at Michigan. It was because they didn't want, he threw them too hot and it was a turnover. But the other thing that JJ did not do when they got down in the 10, certainly down to the 5, and that was a lot probably because Corum was so good at it, they didn't throw a lot of jump balls to any receivers either. And that's got to have a little touch to it. They didn't do a lot of, they didn't throw a lot of screens either, which also you got to have a little bit of a touch on as well. And I wonder if that's something that that he'll demonstrate on Saturday when he's throwing the ball at the combine or something that is working at, if there is something there. I'm not saying that I'm marking him down at all. I think he's as got a good a chance as any of those guys at being the quarterback of this draft class. But those are two things in particular. The jump balls, the screens, and then that 25, 30-yarder down the field, which is he's great at making those throws, but he also, I think, just needs to improve, tighten that up a little bit.
Yeah, JJ, looking at him and listening to him, if you're thinking about drafting somebody, he really, really shows me a lot of the stuff you don't see on film. He's a team guy. He's a tough guy. He's a humble guy. And those are things you want in your quarterback. He's never done nothing stupid off the field. That you want that in your quarterback, man. It's so important. So yeah, I hope AO. I hope Marlon Klein is a guy, man. I hope he's the guy that gives us the blocking tight end and another option there. And Prescorn is going to give us, Denny, Prescorn is going to give us what Loveland gave us as a freshman. I just have a good feeling about. I watched that kid play in high school. The kid from Rochester here, he's a hell of an athlete, man. 6'6", runs, jumps. He's going to give us. He'll split them out. He'll be a problem.
Rochester Adams, you're right. All right, that's good stuff, Scar. I know I didn't know that you traveled the world and watched rugby. You did not know that the outside center for the Menwith Hill Quakers for 2 years was none other than me, and also the MVP of the Amsterdam 92 tour for the Menwith Mongrels was also me, MVP of the Amsterdam tour. So how about that?
You're a multi-talented athlete, Denny.
Outside center mostly, but in out of necessity in Amsterdam on that tour, they moved me out to wing, which you have to have a lot of wheels, and I necessarily didn't have that. But I could.
Hey, I was in Kenya watching rugby, You know, they do their scrum and they're flicking the ball. You know how they flick the ball? You want to talk about some unbelievable athletes I saw in Kenya, in Africa. And, you know, these dudes were and the collisions, no pads, no nothing. I actually told some people in Ann Arbor to go take a look at some of these guys that are playing rugby, how fast and how tough playing that game. And I was really impressed with the athleticism and toughness of these guys, man.
Yeah, well, you mentioned the All Blacks in New Zealand down there in South Africa, the Springboks. They're the
it's them and it's them and the New Zealand. Those are the two best teams, man.
Traditionally, you're right.
Yeah.
They're right.
I'm all about it, Denny. I'm all over it, man. I'm not just a football guy. I look at sports.
Yeah, well, the rugby, it's a heck of a lot like football. So.
Well, the big tackle from the Philadelphia Eagles, didn't they find that guy playing rugby in New Zealand? A big 6'7" monster guy. They found that. Whatever he is. The big Samoan guy. I think they found him in New Zealand. He was a big rugby guy. Unbelievable athlete, and they made a tackle out of him.
Okay. All right. Well, I won the MVP in Amsterdam more for my exploits at the bullfrog and impersonating a Scotsman and an Englishman all week. It had really nothing to do with what was going on the field. It's off the field, which I was, but I still got that trophy to this day. All right, Scott, great job today. Yeah, you really brought it. You're tearing off the edge, and I wondered if you would get to the quarterback, and you answered the question in the first minute.
Danny, the top skill, one of the top skills, we're looking at these. I'm going to close on this.
All right.
You watch college basketball now, and I think one of the greatest skills a head football coach, head basketball has to have at the college level is talent management. Who do I got? What's out there in the transfer portal? What kind of recruits am I bringing in? I got to be great at managing that talent. You know, that's something Jim did a great job with, bringing them guys in. Sherrone is not bringing many. He feels he has what he needs. So I just want to close on that. And I think he feels great with what we have. And I'm fired up that that's where we're at. So I'm going to close on that. If you want to give a comment, go blue.
There you go, Scar. I just want on a sad note, but I want to recognize John.
Oh, no.
Say Craig Rowe, the former Wolverine who played 2009 through 2012, did pass away this week of colon cancer, 33 years old. And John says he was a bright spot during some dark times in Ann Arbor.
He was a great player from Arizona, Taylor Lewan's buddy. I watched him play. I was at practice and watching him. He played early as a freshman. So sad, so young.
33 years old. Condolences to his family, no doubt about that. All right, Scar, we will talk with you next week.
All right, Danny, go blue.
There he is, Jim Scarcelli. Smash that